My father said it like he was reading a dinner menu, telling me my brother deserved it. He handed Logan the house, the company, and the family trust, erasing 15 years of me saving payrolls as if I never existed. Exactly 1 month later, a bank envelope arrived with my name on it. In that moment, I realized they had not just given him a legacy, but a bomb. And the detonator had my signature scrolled across it. My name is Paisley Simmons. If you had asked me who I was 2 months ago, I would have told you I was the invisible steel skeleton holding up North Bridge Civil and Build. I would have told you I was the daughter who learned to read blueprints before she learned to ride a bike. I would have told you I was the designated fixer for a family that specialized in breaking things. But now, staring at the heavy cream-colored envelope on my kitchen counter in Chicago, I realized I was something else entirely. I was the mark. To understand why a simple piece of mail made my blood run cold, you have to understand the dinner that happened exactly 30 days prior. It was a Tuesday. My father, Graham Simmons, did not believe in bad news on Tuesdays. Tuesdays were for meatloaf and projections. So when he summoned us to the family estate on the main line, that sprawling colonial revival house that smelled of lemon polish and old money anxieties, I assumed we were celebrating a contract win. I was wrong. We were sitting in the dining room. The mahogany table was long enough to seat 12, but it was just the 4 of us. My mother, Denise, was arranging her napkin with the nervous energy of a woman who knew a bomb was about to go off, but hoped that if she folded the linen correctly, the explosion would be polite. Logan, my younger brother, was slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone. 28. Logan still had the soft, uncalloused hands of someone whose hardest day of work involved a slow internet connection. Then my father cleared his throat. It was a sound that used to command boardrooms. Now it just sounded like gravel shifting in a mixer. I have made a decision, he said. He did not look at me. He looked at the centerpiece. It is time for the next generation to take the helm properly. I sat up straighter. I had been running operations for 5 years. I had pulled the company out of the red after the disastrous highway project in 2019. I had negotiated the union contracts last fall while Dad was resting in Florida. I assumed properly meant making my title official. I am transferring the deed to the house, the majority shares of Northbridge and control of the family trust to Logan. My father said the silence that followed was so absolute I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. It ticked 3 times before my brain processed the sentence. Logan, I repeated. It was not a question. It was a flat verification of reality. Your brother is ready, Dad said, finally looking at me. His eyes were hard, the way they got when he was trying to sell a client on a timeline he knew was impossible. He needs the assets to build his credit profile for the expansion. We need a strong male lead for the investors. It is tradition. Paisley, you know how the industry is. The industry, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, cares about competence. Logan thought a retention bond was a type of glue last week. He learns fast. My mother interjected, her voice shrill. Paisley, please. Your father has thought this through. It is about legacy. And what is my legacy? I asked. 15 years. The nights I slept in the site trailer. The payroll I covered out of my savings in 2020. My father waved his hand. A dismissal as casual as swatting a fly. You have been compensated. You have a salary. But Logan needs the foundation. He is the son. He carries the name forward. Then he delivered the line that would replay in my head every night for the next month. He sliced a piece of meatloaf and said, "Your brother deserves it." He said it with such conviction, as if Logan's 28 years of mediocrity were a heavy burden that required a reward. As if my 15 years of excellence were just a hobby I should be thanked for indulging. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I did not cry. Those were reactions for people who still had hope that the situation could be fixed with emotion. I was an operator. I looked at the numbers and the numbers said I was bankrupt in this emotional economy. I stood up. The legs of my heavy wooden chair scraped against the hardwood floor. It was a harsh, stuttering shriek that made my mother flinch. That was the only sound I made. I walked out of the dining room, past the clock, out the front door, and into my car. I drove 300 M west that night. I did not stop until I saw the skyline of Chicago. That was a month ago. I thought I had walked away clean. I thought I had left them to their legacy. Then the envelope arrived. It was sitting on top of a stack of junk mail. The return address was from First Keystone Commercial Bank. It was not a personal letter. It was stamped. Urgent notice of obligation. Picked it up. My hands were steady, but my stomach turned over. I worked in construction. I knew what bank letters looked like. This was not a marketing flyer. This was the kind of letter that preceded a lawsuit. I sliced it open. Inside was a single sheet of stiff paper. Dear Simmons, this letter serves as formal notification regarding the commercial line of credit 884-9200 associated with Northbridge Civil and Build. As the primary personal guarantor listed on the master promissory note dated October 15th, you are hereby notified that the account has entered non-compliance status due to a collateral deficiency. Please refer to the attached schedule. I read the paragraph 3 times. Guarantor. Primary. Personal. Guarantor. The date caught my eye. October 15th. My mind raced back. October 15th was a week before the dinner. It was a week when I was technically still the COO, but my access to the digital signing room had been glitching. I remembered asking Logan about it. He had laughed and said they were updating the server security. He said he would handle the paperwork for the bridge loan renewal. I will handle it, he had said. I dropped the letter on the counter and ran to my laptop. I needed to see the document. If my name was on a guarantee, there had to be a digital trail. I still had my read-only access to the company server and oversight they had likely forgotten to revoke in their arrogance. I logged in. The password still worked. I navigated through the folders with muscle memory. Finance Loans Active Agreements 2024. There it was. Master Renewal Octi 15 signed PDF. I opened it. I scrolled past the boilerplate legal text, past the interest rate clauses, down to the signature page. My breath hitched. There in black ink was my signature. It was a good loop. The P had that specific sharp upward stroke I used. The S in Simmons trailed off just the way I did it when I was signing a stack of checks. To a stranger. It was me. But I looked closer. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. On October 15th, I was in a site meeting in Ohio. I remembered it because it was raining and I had ruined a pair of suede boots. I had not been in the office. I had not logged into DocHycene. I checked the metadata of the PDF created by L. Simmons. TED for 15 p.m. I felt a cold flush of realization wash over me. They did not just cut me out. They had pinned me down first. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the hard granite. The noise made me jump. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from my mother. We had not spoken since the chair scraped the floor. Mom, honey, please do not be mad when you see the mail. Things are very bad here. We had to do what was best for the family. The audacity of it took my breath away. Do not be mad. It was the same thing she used to say when Logan broke my toys or when he crashed my car. As if my anger was the problem, not the destruction that caused it. I did not reply. My thumbs hovered over the screen, trembling with the urge to unleash 15 years of suppressed rage. I wanted to scream at her that fraud was not a family decision. I wanted to tell her that federal prison was not a rough patch. But I stopped myself. Dad always said, emotion is expensive. He was right. If I reacted emotionally now, I would tip my hand. I needed to think like a general contractor looking at a collapsing building. I needed to shore up the foundation before I started demolition. I closed the messaging app and opened my contacts. I scrolled down to M. Marcus Thorne. We had gone to college together. He was now a partner at a firm in Chicago that specialized in commercial litigation. He was the kind of lawyer who ate sharks for breakfast. I hit dial. Paisley. He sounded surprised. I have not heard from you since you moved. Everything okay? No, I said, keeping my voice level. Marcus, I have a hypothetical question. I charge $400 an hour for hypotheticals, but for you, the first one is free. Shoot. If a personal guarantee on a commercial loan has a signature that looks like mine, but I did not sign it and the loan goes bad, who does the bank come for first? There was a pause on the line. The playful tone in Marcus's voice evaporated. Are we talking about a small loan? Paisley. We are talking about a line of credit for a mid-sized construction firm, probably 7 figures. Jesus. Marcus breathed. Okay, listen to me. The bank does not care about the backstory. They do not care about family drama. They operate on a joint and several liability basis usually. But if you are the guarantor with the most liquid assets or the only one they can easily locate, they come for you. They freeze your accounts. They put a lien on your future earnings. Then you have to spend 2 years and $50,000 in legal fees proving you did not sign it. So I am the shield. I said. No, Marcus corrected me. You are the sacrifice. If the company defaults, the guarantor gets eaten. If someone forged your name, they were not just trying to get a loan approved. They were setting up a fall guy. I lowered the phone from my ear. The kitchen was silent, but the pieces of the puzzle were slamming into place with deafening clarity. The dinner. The speech. Your brother deserves it. Dad knew. He knew the company was in trouble. He knew the books were bleeding. He knew Logan could not fix it. But he also knew that he, Graham Simmons, did not want to lose his retirement home. He did not want his name on the bankruptcy filing. So he gave the company to Logan to stroke his ego. But he gave the debt to me. They handed Logan the keys to the kingdom because they knew the castle was burning. And they forged my signature on the insurance policy so that when the ashes settled, the bill would come to my door. Paisley. Marcus' voice was tiny coming from the phone in my hand. Are you there? I'm here, I said, lifting the phone back up. Marcus, I need you to clear your schedule. Paisley. What are you going to do? I looked at the PDF on my screen. I looked at the signature that was mine and not mine. I am going to teach my family a lesson about structural integrity, I said. But first, I need the blueprints. I hung up. I picked up the phone again and opened the message thread with my mother. I read her text again. Things are very bad here. Good. I thought I typed a reply. I did not ask. How could you? I did not ask why. I did not offer forgiveness. Type. Send me a copy of every single document related to the loan, the original promissory note, the extensions, the addendums, and the correspondence with the bank. Send me everything tonight. I hit send. I watched the delivered status appear. Then the 3 dancing dots of someone typing. Then the dots disappeared. Then they appeared again. She was scared. She should be. My father said my brother deserved the company. He was right. Logan deserved exactly what he was about to get. And as for me, I deserved the truth. And I was going to tear the house down brick by brick until I found it. To understand why I was the perfect victim for their financial sins, you have to understand that in the Simmons household, gravity works differently for boys and girls. For Logan, the world was a soft mattress designed to catch him. For me, it was a ladder with missing rungs that I was expected to climb without making a sound. This dual reality did not start with the bank loan. It started in the backyard when I was 10 and Logan was 8. It was a humid July afternoon. My father had hired a crew to build a play structure for Logan. They constructed a miniature workshop. It was built from real cedar, not plastic, with a functional workbench, a pegboard for tools, and a little personalized sign that read Logan's construction code. It cost more than my first car would eventually cost for me on the same birthday. I received a gift card to a bookstore and a polite pat on the head. Girls just need to read, my father had said, sipping his iced tea while watching Logan bang a real hammer against a piece of expensive lumber. You keep your mind sharp, Paisley. You will make a great assistant to a doctor or a lawyer someday. Support is a noble profession. Support. That was the word he planted in my spine like a crooked seed. My mother, Denise, just smiled her vacant peacekeeping smile. She was the architect of compliance in our house. She believed that if you ignored the cracks in the drywall long enough, they would simply disappear. Let your brother have the tools, honey, she would say. He needs to feel important. It is hard being a boy. I never understood that logic. I was the one getting straight A's. I was the one winning the science fair with a structural load model made of popsicle sticks. Logan was the one eating paste in the back of the classroom and blaming the teacher for it. Yet, he was the one who needed to feel important. The only person who saw me was my grandfather, the founder of Northbridge. He was retired by then, a man who smelled of tobacco and Old Spice. He watched me fix the billing errors in my father's checkbook when I was 12. I had found a double entry that would have cost the family $500. Grandpa had leaned in, his eyes sharp behind thick glasses. You understand the numbers, Paisley, he told me. And more importantly, you understand the people who try to hide the numbers. Never lose that. That sentence became my secret oxygen. While Logan floated through adolescence on a raft of excuses, I started digging trenches, literally. When I was 19, home from college for the summer, I asked my father for an internship. I was studying civil engineering with a minor in business management. I wanted to learn the family trade. The job site is no place for a young lady. Graham Simmons told me, the language alone would make your mother faint. Why not help at the front desk? We need someone to organize the holiday cards. I declined. Instead, I went to a rival firm, disguised my last name, and got hired as a general laborer. I spent that summer sweating through my shirt, hauling drywall, and learning the rhythm of a job site. I learned that respect is not given because of a last name. It is earned by knowing how to hold a shovel and when to bring donuts for the foreman. I learned to read a blueprint better than I could read a novel. I learned that a delay in concrete pouring on a Tuesday meant an overtime disaster on a Saturday. Logan, meanwhile, spent that summer finding himself in Europe. My parents paid for the trip. They said it was important for him to have cultural exposure. He came back with a tan and a vague interest in architecture that lasted exactly 2 weeks. By the time we both officially entered Northbridge, the divide was a canyon. I came in through the side door. I started as a junior estimator. My office was a converted closet that smelled of toner. I spent my days counting linear feet of piping and arguing with vendors over the price of rebar. I knew the price of every screw, every bolt, and every hour of labor. I was the one tracking change orders until my eyes burned. I was the one driving to sites at 6 o'clock in the morning to verify that the subcontractors were actually working and not just billing us for coffee breaks. Logan came in through the front door. He had barely scraped through a general business degree at a state college where the acceptance rate was basically 100%. Yet his starting title was Executive Director of Strategic Development. He did not have an office. He had a suite. He had leather chairs. He had business cards with gold embossing. But he did not know the difference between a load-bearing wall and a partition. I remember walking into his office one afternoon to get a signature on a purchase order. He was putting a golf ball into a cup on the carpet. "Hey sis." He grinned. Dad says I am crushing it. Did you see the new logo I designed? Very modern. We are 3 weeks behind on the warehouse project. Logan, I said, ignoring the golf club. The steel delivery is late because someone forgot to approve the deposit. Relax. He waved his hand. I delegated that. It is under control. You worry too much. That is your problem. You are too rigid. Dad says business is an art, not a science. Business is not an art when the bank is charging you interest on a construction loan every single day. Business is math. Cold, hard, unforgiving math. The breaking point, or what should have been the breaking point, came 2 years ago. We were working on a municipal road expansion project. It was a mid-sized job, about $4 million, but it was high profile. If we nailed it, we would get the contract for the county bridge renovation. Dad had put Logan in charge as the project lead to give him a win. Let the boy shine. Dad had told me, you just handle the paperwork in the background. Let Logan be the face. The face. Unfortunately, forgot to file the environmental impact permits for the drainage system. I found out 3 days before the inspectors were due to arrive. The site foreman called me in a panic. If the permits were not on site, they would shut us down. A shutdown meant fines of $10,000 a day. It meant losing the bond. It meant the family name would be mud in the county. I drove to the site. I found Logan sitting in the trailer flirting with the safety coordinator. Where are the permits? Logan? I asked. The what? He blinked. Oh, the water things. I think I gave that to the admin to mail. Or maybe I put it in the to-do pile. He pointed to a stack of papers that had a half-eaten sandwich sitting on top of it. I did not scream. I did not lecture. I went into survival mode. I spent the next 48 hours awake. I drove to the county clerk's office. I sat outside the commissioner's door until he agreed to see me. I used every favor I had ever banked. I called in a marker from a surveyor I had helped years ago. I redrew the drainage plan on the hood of my truck at midnight, because the original files were corrupted on Logan's laptop. I got the permit stamped at 4 in the morning on the day of the inspection. When the inspectors arrived at 8, I was standing there shaking from caffeine and exhaustion, holding the binder. The inspection passed. The project continued. We came in on time and under budget. The client, a gruff city engineer named Mr. Henderson, took us out to dinner to celebrate the completion. We were at a steakhouse. Dad was beaming. Logan was wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly rent. I was wearing a blazer I had bought on sale, trying to hide the dark circles under my eyes. This was a hell of a job, Graham. Mr. Henderson said, slicing into his ribeye. I admit I was worried about the timeline near the end, but you pulled it off. Solid work. I waited. I waited for my father to say, Paisley saved us. I waited for him to say, my daughter stayed up for 2 days straight. I would have settled for. It was a team effort. Graham Simmons raised his glass of scotch. He looked at Logan with eyes full of wet, proud adoration. Well, my father said, his voice booming with false modesty, you know how it is, Bob. We are a traditional family. The women keep us organized. But when the rubber meets the road, the Simmons men have a steady hand. Logan here really stepped up. He has that instinct. You cannot teach that. Logan nodded, accepting the praise as if he were starving for it. Thanks, Dad. Just doing what needed to be done. I sat there. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at Logan. He believed it. That was the most terrifying part. He actually believed he had done the work. He had rewritten the memory in his head to erase my panic, my sleepless nights, and my intervention. In his version of the story, he was the hero. And my father. He knew the truth. He had to know. But the truth was inconvenient to the narrative he was building. The narrative was that Logan was the heir and I was the help. To the next generation. Mr. Henderson toasted. To the next generation. My father echoed, clinking his glass against Logan's. They did not clink glasses with me. I took a sip of water. Tasted like metal. That night, I drove home in silence. I did not quit. I did not storm out. I was too entrenched, too conditioned to seek their approval. I thought if I just worked harder, if I just saved them one more time, eventually the scales would tip. I told myself, the results will speak for themselves. I was naive. I was stupid. I did not realize that in my family, results were like a foreign language. My father and brother were deaf to competence. They only heard what they wanted to hear. They heard tradition. They heard legacy. They heard son. And now? Looking at the bank papers on my kitchen counter in Chicago, I realized exactly what that tradition cost. They had used my credit score to underwrite Logan's fantasy. They had used my name to insure a ship they knew was sinking because the captain was a child playing dress-up. Grandpa was right. I understood the numbers. But I had failed to understand the people. I had underestimated just how much my father was willing to sacrifice to keep his delusion alive. He would burn his smart daughter at the stake just to keep his foolish son warm. But the fire was out now. And I was holding the match. For 15 years. My job description was simple. Even if it was never written down. I was the janitor of Northbridge Civil and Build. Not the kind who pushed a broom. Though I had done that, too. But the kind who cleaned up the mess after the executives were done playing business. My day did not start with coffee. It started with damage control. My phone would ring at 5 o'clock in the morning. Usually a site superintendent screaming that the lumber delivery was short, or the concrete mix was wrong. I would spend the hours between 5 and 8, fixing problems that should have been solved 3 weeks prior. I negotiated with vendors who had put us on credit hold. I smoothed over rifts with city inspectors who were tired of being blown off by our executive director. That was the title on Logan's door. Executive director. While I was arguing with a union rep about overtime pay in a trailer that smelled of wet mud and stale cigarettes. Logan was usually on a client development trip. That was my father's euphemism for a vacation. I remember one specific Tuesday in November. We were bleeding cash on a high-rise retrofit in downtown Philadelphia. The margins were razor thin. I was in the office staring at a spreadsheet that was flashing red. Trying to find $12,000 to cover payroll because a client payment was late. My phone pinged. It was a notification from the company Instagram account. There was Logan. He was holding a margarita the size of a fishbowl. He was wearing sunglasses that cost more than my first car. The caption read, "Networking in Cabo. Big things coming for Northbridge." I walked into my father's office. He was looking at Architectural Digest. "Dad," I said, putting my phone on his desk. "We have $24,000 in the operating account. Payroll is $36,000. It runs on Friday. Logan is in Mexico charging the company card for networking at a resort that costs $800 a night." My father did not even look at the phone. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Paisley, you have to look at the big picture. Logan is building relationships. That is how you get the big contracts. You cannot catch a whale with a fishing pole. You need a yacht." "We do not have a yacht, Dad," I snapped. "We have a leaking dinghy and I am the only one bailing water. You worry too much," he said, dismissing me. "Move some money from the equipment fund. Figure it out. That is what you're good at. You are the nuts and bolts girl." The nuts and bolts girl. That was me. I tightened the screws while they stripped the gears. The breaking point of my professional sanity happened 6 months before the end. Logan had decided to take initiative on a new subdivision project. He signed a contract with a framing subcontractor without showing it to me first. When I finally saw the document, I nearly threw up. Logan had agreed to a clause that penalized us $5,000 for every day the site was not ready for the framers, but he had also agreed to a schedule that was physically impossible unless we could control the weather. He had waived our right to inspect the materials before installation. I stormed into his office. "Did you read this?" asked. "Waiving the contract. Logan. If it rains for 2 days, we lose $10,000. If the wood is warped, we have to pay them to take it down and put it back up." Logan shrugged, spinning a pen in his fingers. The guy seemed nice. He said it was standard boilerplate. Besides, Dad said I need to be more aggressive with decisiveness. I made a command decision. "You made a mistake." I said a $100,000 mistake. I took it to Dad. I highlighted the clauses in yellow. I showed him the math. I showed him that this single contract could wipe out the profit for the entire quarter. Dad looked at the paper. Then he looked at me. Then he looked out the window. He is learning. "Paisley," Dad said softly. He took action. I like that. He is showing leadership. We can absorb the cost if it goes wrong, but we cannot put a price on his confidence. Do not undermine him in front of the crew. Undermine him. I went back to my office and closed the door. I did not cry. I fixed it. I called the subcontractor. I threatened to void the deal based on a technicality in their insurance rider, unless they renegotiated the penalty clause. I spent 4 hours bullying a man who was twice my size until he agreed to a new term sheet. I saved the company $40,000 that afternoon. When I told Dad, he just nodded and said, "Good. Keep it smooth." He never told Logan. Logan went on believing he had made a great deal. And that brought us to the dinner. The dinner where the world stopped. I have told you about the chair scraping the floor. I have told you about the rage. But I have not told you about the cold hard logistics of what happened after I stood up. I walked out to my car. But my father followed me to the porch. He did not run. He walked with the slow, heavy gait of a man who believed he held the moral high ground. "Paisley," he called out. Not honey. Not sweetheart. Just my name. Like a summons. I turned around. The night air was cold. "You are being dramatic," he said. "I am being realistic," I said. "You just gave a multi-million-dollar asset to a child. It is not just a gift," Dad said. "It is a structure. The trust. The house. The controlling interest in Northbridge. It is all in his name now. Effective the 1st of the month. Everything. Even the equipment assets. Even the land on Route 30. Everything," he said. "It needs to be consolidated for tax purposes and for the optics. Investors like a clear hierarchy." I laughed. It was a dry cracking sound. And where do I fit in this hierarchy, Dad? Am I still the nuts and bolts girl? Do I still get to clean up the mess when Logan drives this clear hierarchy off a cliff? "We have a plan for you," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was not the bank envelope that would come later. This was a white business letter envelope. "We appreciate your service, Paisley. We really do. But Logan needs room to operate without interference. He feels you hover. He feels you second-guesses him. I second-guess him because he cannot count. I said we are giving you a transition package," Dad said, holding out the envelope. 3 months of salary. Full benefits for the rest of the year, and you can keep the company truck for another 3 weeks while you find your own vehicle." I stared at the envelope. 3 months. 15 years of missed birthdays, ruined relationships, sleepless nights, and ulcers. 15 years of saving them from bankruptcy, from lawsuits, from their own sheer stupidity. And my value was calculated at 3 months of pay and a borrowed truck. You are firing me, I said. We are letting you spread your wings, he corrected. You are too good for us, Paisley. You always have been. Go find something of your own. Let your brother have this. I did not take the envelope. I looked him in the eye. You keep the money, I said. You are going to need it. I walked to my truck. It was a Ford F-150, black, with the Northbridge logo on the door. A logo I had helped redesign 8 years ago. I got in. I did not look back at the house. I did not look at my mother, who I knew was watching from the window behind the curtains. I drove to my apartment in the city. It was a small place. Nothing like the estate. I spent the next 4 hours packing. I did not pack everything. I did not want everything. I wanted to travel light. Packed my clothes. I packed my laptop. My personal one. Not the company one. I packed my degree and I packed the photo of Grandpa. It was a black and white picture from 1980. He was standing in front of a bulldozer wearing a hard hat, smiling like he owned the world. He was the only man in that family who ever looked at me and saw a person, not a utility. I left the keys to the company truck on my kitchen counter with a note for the landlord to give them to my father when he came looking. I called a cab to take me to a rental car agency. I rented a sedan with my own credit card. I drove west. I chose Chicago because it was big, it was cold, and it was honest. Chicago is a city built of steel and broad shoulders. It does not care who your father is. It only cares if you can survive the wind. I arrived at 5 in the morning. I checked into a motel. I slept for 12 hours. When I woke up, I felt a strange sensation. It was silence. For the first time in 15 years, my phone was not ringing. No one was asking me where the invoices were. No one was screaming about a permit. No one was asking me to fix a disaster I did not create. It was terrifying. And then it was intoxicating. I spent the first week finding a small apartment. I spent the second week incorporating my own business. I called it Ledger Lake Project Advisory. The name meant nothing to anyone else. But to me it meant clarity. A ledger does not lie. A lake is deep and clear. I started reaching out to contacts I had made over the years. Not the ones loyal to my father, but the ones who knew who actually did the work. Vendors. Subcontractors. Former clients who had moved to the Midwest. Paisley Simmons. One developer asked when I called him. The one who saved the bridge project in Philly. That is me, I said. I thought you were tied to Northbridge for life. I am independent now, I said. I specialize in crisis management and project recovery. You are hired, he said. I have a mall renovation that is 6 months behind. Can you be here Monday? I was working. I was building. I was breathing. I cut off all contact with my family. I blocked their numbers. I sent their emails to a folder I never opened. I did not do it out of spite. I did it because I knew that if I heard my mother's voice or my father's rationalizations, I would crumble. I needed to harden. I needed to become the person they forced me to be. I thought I had escaped. I thought the severance was the final insult. I thought the transfer of the house and company was the end of the story. I was wrong. It was exactly 30 days after I left. I was sitting in my new kitchen drinking tea, looking at a schedule for the mall project. I felt good. I felt clean. Then the mailman dropped the stack of letters through the slot in the door. I walked over and picked them up. Bill, flyer. And then the thick cream-colored envelope from the bank. First Keystone Commercial Bank. My heart stopped. I knew that logo. I knew that bank. That was the bank my father used. That was the bank that held the mortgage on the house and the credit lines for the company. Why were they writing to me in Chicago? I ripped it open. I read the words guarantor and default. I looked at the date and I realized that my father's speech about letting me spread my wings was not an act of mercy. It was an act of disposal. They had not just fired me. They had tied me to the anchor of their sinking ship, cut the rope and then waved goodbye as I drifted away. My father had said, "Your brother deserves it." He was right. Logan deserved the company, but he did not deserve my life. I put the letter down. I picked up my phone. I unblocked my mother's number. I did not scream. I did not cry. The nuts and bolts girl was gone. The demolition expert had just arrived. Chicago did not ask me who my father was. Chicago did not ask if I came from the main line, or if I knew how to hold a cocktail fork properly. Chicago only asked one thing. Can you get the job done? And for the first time in my life, the answer depended entirely on me. My new headquarters was not a corner suite with mahogany panels. It was a 600-foot apartment in a neighborhood that real estate agents politely called up and coming. My desk was a folding table I bought at a thrift store for $15. My office chair was a kitchen stool that wobbled if I leaned too far to the left. But the air in that apartment tasted sweet. Tasted like autonomy. I woke up every morning at 5. There was no dread in my stomach. There was no anxiety about what Logan had broken while I was sleeping. I made my own coffee. I put on my steel-toed boots, the ones scuffed with real lime and mud, not the pristine ones Logan wore for photo opportunities. I grabbed my laptop, which was covered in dust, and I went to work. My first client was a man named Mr. Kowalski. He was a developer who had bitten off more than he could chew with a mixed-use renovation in the West Loop. When I walked onto the site for the initial consultation, it looked like a crime scene. Drywall was stacked in puddles of standing water. The electricians were screaming at the plumbers. The schedule on the wall was 4 months old and the budget was a fantasy. Kowalski looked at me with skepticism. I was a woman in a heavy coat holding a clipboard standing 5 feet 4 inches in a room full of angry men who were 6 foot tall. I do not need a consultant, he grumbled, kicking a piece of debris. I need a miracle. We are 60 days behind. The bank is breathing down my neck. The general contractor says we need another $100,000 just to finish the rough-in. You do not need a miracle, I said, my voice cutting through the noise of a circular saw. You need a schedule that respects physics. And you need to stop paying for change orders that were included in the original scope. I spent the next 3 hours walking every inch of that building. I did not look at the view. I looked at the wiring. I looked at the HVAC ducting. I looked at the invoices piled on a dusty table. By noon, I had a list. First, I told Kowalski, your electrical sub is double billing you for materials. He charged you for 3,000 feet of copper wire. But this building only has 12,200 feet of run. Second, your framing crew is waiting on the HVAC guys. But the HVAC guys are waiting on a permit you forgot to post. Third, your site manager is ordering lunch for the crew on the company card every day, which is adding $2,000 a month to your overhead. Kowalski's jaw dropped. How did you see all that? I have been cleaning up messes for 15 years. I said, do you want me to fix it? He hired me on the spot. For the next 6 weeks, I lived on that site. I became the traffic cop, the accountant, and the bad cop. I fired the electrical sub and brought in a vendor I found through a supplier who respected me. I renegotiated the lumber contract. I created a checklist system, a simple laminated sheet for every room. No one got paid until the checklist was signed off. The grumbling stopped. The screaming matches stopped. The walls went up. The lights turned on. We finished the project 2 weeks ahead of the revised schedule. We came in 5% under the emergency budget I had set on the final walkthrough. Kowalski handed me a check. It was the first check ever made out to Ledger Lake Project Advisory. You are terrifying, like he told me, shaking my hand. But you are the best operator I've ever seen. Not for a woman. For anyone. Thank you, I said. What is your last name again? He asked. Simmons. Any relation to the big outfit in Philly? I hesitated for a fraction of a second. No, I said firmly. No relation. Just a common name. It was the first time I had denied them. It felt like shedding a heavy skin. Word traveled fast in Chicago. Few are good. People talk. Few are cheap. People talk. I was not cheap. But I was good. Kowalski introduced me to a restaurant group owner. The restaurant group owner introduced me to a boutique hotel manager. Suddenly, my folding table was covered in blueprints. I could not do it alone anymore. I needed help. But I did not go to the headhunters. I did not look for Ivy League degrees or shiny resumes. I looked for the people like me, the ones in the background. I hired Maya. She was a 40-year-old mother of 3 who had been an administrative assistant at a large firm for a decade. They treated her like a coffee machine. I interviewed her at a Starbucks. I saw the way she organized her notebook. I saw the way she tracked the time. I do not need you to fetch coffee, I told her. I need you to run the billing. I need you to catch the errors before I do. Can you handle authority? I have 3 teenagers, she said. I can handle anything. Then I hired David. He was a young guy. Barely 22. He had been fired from his last job as a junior surveyor because he refused to sign off on a measurement that was 2 and off. His boss wanted it done fast. David wanted it done right. You were fired for being accurate, I asked him. Yes, ma'am, he said. Looking at his shoes. I know it sounds bad. It sounds perfect, I said. You start Monday. Your job is to measure everything. If it is a millimeter off, you tell me. And you never apologize for the truth. We were a ragtag team. A disowned daughter. A frustrated mother. And a fired perfectionist. But we were efficient. We were deadly. We moved through projects like a tactical unit. For the first time in my life, when I walked into a room, people stood up to shake my hand because of what I had done, not because of whose DNA I shared. Paisley suggested this. They would say. Or ask Paisley. She will know. Not Graham's daughter. Just Paisley. It was addictive. It was healing. But even as I built my new life brick by brick, the ghost of the old one kept scratching at the window. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the digital world is small. I had a burner email address, one I use for old vendor newsletters and industry updates. I checked it once a week 3 months after I left. An email arrived from a sender named Steelbeam88. I knew that handle. It belonged to Frank, a site foreman who had been with Northbridge for 20 years. He was a good man. He had taught me how to drive a backhoe when I was 16. The subject line was blank. Inside, there was no text. Just 3 photos. The first photo was of the headquarters. The lawn, usually manicured to a golf course green, was yellow and knee-high. Weeds were choking the sign that said Northbridge Civil and Build. The second photo was of the equipment yard. It should have been full of yellow excavators and trucks. It was half empty. The few machines left looked rusted.
Sitting auto dangles.
The third photo was of my old office window. The blinds were crooked. There was a for lease sign in the window of the adjacent building which we used to own. My stomach twisted. It takes years to build a company. Takes months to neglect it to death. Then a text message came through on my personal phone. It was from Janet, the head of HR. Or she used to be Janet. He fired me today. He said I was negative energy. He fired Miles, too. And Sarah. He is bringing in his friends from college. They play video games in the conference room. Paisley. The clients are calling and no one answers. It is over. I stared at the phone. It is over. Part of me wanted to reply. Part of me wanted to say, I told you so. A part of me wanted to ask if my father was watching this happen. Was he sitting in his study watching the weeds grow? Telling himself it was just a transition phase. But I did not reply. I put the phone down. Paisley. Maya called from the other side of the room. The invoice for the West Loop job just cleared. We are in the black for the quarter. That is great. Maya, I said. My voice sounded hollow. Are you okay? She asked. She had that motherly instinct that could detect a mood shift from 50 paces. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. I was not tired. I was grieving. I was grieving the death of something I had hated, but also something I had built. It was like watching a house you built burn down. Even if you had been evicted from it. I told myself it was not my problem. I told myself I was free. I had called Marcus, my lawyer friend. I had sent the demand to my mother for the documents. 2 days passed. I did not sleep. I went to work, but my mind was in Pennsylvania. On the 3rd day, a courier arrived at my apartment. He handed me a thick packet. It was from my mother. She had actually done it. She had sent the files. I sat on the floor of my living room. I spread the papers out. There were loan applications. There were promissory notes. There were board resolutions authorizing the debt. And on every single one of them, on the line marked Guarantor, was my name. But it was not just my name. It was the dates that made my blood freeze. The first loan was taken out 3 days after I fixed the bridge project. The second one was taken out the week I was in the hospital with pneumonia 2 years ago. The third one, the big one, the one that triggered the default notice, was dated the week of the dinner. I picked up the phone and called Marcus. I have the documents, I said. Marcus, it is not just one signature. It is a history. They have been using me as a credit mule for 2 years. 2 years? Marcus asked. But you were working there. Why didn't you know? Because I was handling operations, I said, realizing the brilliance of their scheme. I looked at the project budgets. I never looked at the corporate financing. Dad kept that close to the chest. He said he wanted to spare me the stress of the banking relationships. He was not sparing you the stress, Marcus said, his voice hard. He was sparing you the knowledge that you were already on the hook. I looked at the signature on the most recent document. It was shaky. It looked like someone had practiced it 100 times but faltered at the end. Marcus, I said. If the company goes under and I am the guarantor, do they lose the house? Who owns the house? Marcus asked. Logan. Dad transferred it to him last month. Then no. Marcus said if the guarantee is in your name, the bank comes for your assets. They come for your savings. They come for your future wages. They come for Ledger Lake. Logan keeps the house. Logan keeps the trust. You get the debt. The room spun. It wasn't just incompetence. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a setup. My father knew the ship was going down. He knew he couldn't save it. So he put his son in the lifeboat with the assets and he handcuffed his daughter to the engine room with the debt. Paisley, Marcus said. I am here, I whispered. You need to listen to me, Marcus said. If this signature is forged, we have a defense. But it is going to be ugly. It means accusing your family of felony fraud. Are you ready for that? I looked at the picture of my grandfather I had placed on my bookshelf. He looked so proud in his hard hat. He built things. He didn't steal. I looked at the email from Frank. The weeds. The rust. The decay. Then I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. I saw the woman who had built a business in Chicago in 3 months. I saw the woman who commanded respect from angry electricians. I was not the victim anymore. I was the contractor and I had just found one massive structural failure in the foundation of my life. Marcus, I said. My voice steady and cold. I am not just ready to accuse them. I am ready to bury them. Good. Marcus said. Because if someone went to the trouble of practicing your signature, it means they had a plan. They didn't just want money, Paisley. They wanted an exit strategy. And you were it. I hung up the phone. I packed a bag. Not the light bag I came with. I packed my best suit. I packed the original files. I packed my laptop. I called Maya. I have to go out of town for a few days, I told her. You are in charge. Is everything okay? She asked. No, I said. But it is about to be handled. I walked out of my apartment. I walked into the Chicago wind, pushed against me. But I didn't stagger. I leaned into it. I was going home. And I wasn't bringing a checkbook. I was bringing a wrecking ball. The silence I had cultivated in Chicago was shattered not by a scream, but by the relentless vibration of my phone against the plywood surface of my desk. It started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and did not stop. For weeks. My family had treated me like a ghost. Now, suddenly, they needed the ghost to haunt the bank manager. The first crack in the dam was a text message from my mother. It popped up while I was reviewing a change order for the West Loop project. Mom, the loan is due. They are saying things about a lawsuit. Please answer. They are saying things. It was classic Denise Simmons. She spoke about financial ruin the same way she spoke about bad weather, as if it were an unfortunate event that just happened to people, rather than a direct result of atmospheric pressure, or in this case gross negligence. I did not reply. I let the phone buzz. Then came the voicemail. I stared at the screen. Voicemail from Dad. I had not heard his voice since the night he handed me the severance envelope. Press play. Putting the phone on speaker so I could type while I listened. Paisley. His voice filled the small room. He sounded older. The booming baritone that used to command silence on a job site was thin, frayed at the edges. We are experiencing a liquidity variance. A timing issue with the receivables. The bank is being unreasonable about the covenant terms. We need you to call the relationship manager just to smooth it over. You know how to talk to them. We need your help to bridge the gap. I stopped typing. Liquidity variance. Timing issue. He could not say it. He could not say the word collapse. He could not say we are broke. Even with the water rising past his nose, Graham Simmons was still trying to sell me on the idea that this was just a minor operational hiccup. He wanted me to call the bank. He wanted me to use the credibility I had built over 15 years to buy them time. He wanted me to fix it again. But this time the fix wasn't a late concrete truck. It was a noose. I picked up the phone. I did not call him back. I texted my mother. Paisley. Send me the full loan file. The promissory note. The guarantee addendum. The correspondence from the legal department. Send it now. Do not miss a single page. 10 minutes later. My email pinged. Subject FWD loan docs confidential. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF 50 pages long. I scrolled past the standard boilerplate language I knew by heart. I scrolled past the interest rate tables. I stopped at page 42. Title: Personal Guarantee Addendum. Unlimited liability. There it was. My name. Paisley Simmons. Typed neatly under the line and above it. A signature. I zoomed in until the black ink became a landscape of pixels. It was a good forgery. I had to give them credit for that. Whoever did this had spent time studying the way I sign checks. They had the sharp upward thrust of the P almost perfect. They had the loop on the Y correct. But they missed the rhythm when I sign my name. Especially on legal documents. I have a tic. I always lift the pen slightly before crossing the T in the middle of the signature, creating a microscopic gap in the ink flow. It is a muscle memory born from signing thousands of invoices in cold trailers with cheap ballpoint pens. This signature flowed smoothly. It was drawn, not written. The pressure was too even. It lacked the aggression of my hand. I looked at the date next to the signature. October 25th. I froze. October 25th. I opened my calendar app. I scrolled back. On October 25th, I was not in Pennsylvania. I was not even on the East Coast. I was in Chicago. I had just landed. I was standing in line at a coffee shop in O'Hare Airport, buying a latte and wondering where I was going to sleep that night. I opened my banking app. I searched the transaction history. Delta Airlines Flight 492. Betrayal D. Depart 10 a.m. Arrive 11:30 a.m. I had the receipt. I had the digital boarding pass saved in my wallet. I was physically 500 miles away when Paisley Simmons supposedly walked into the North Bridge office and signed her life away to secure a $2 million line of credit for her brother. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a felony. My blood ran cold, then hot. They did not just use my name because I was the logical choice. They waited until I was gone. They waited until I was out of the room, out of the state, and out of the company to pin the target on my back. I needed to know who held the pen. I knew Logan was stupid, but he was lazy stupid. Forgery required effort. It required a level of malice I did not think he possessed. He usually just ignored rules. He did not actively manufacture fraud unless he had help. I thought of the people left in that building. My father was too proud to forge a signature. He would have ordered someone else to do it. My mother would have been too scared. I needed an insider. I scrolled through my contacts. Most of the good people were gone, fired, or quit. But there was one man who might answer. Elliot Crane. He was the CFO before my father pushed him into early retirement to make room for Logan's new team. Elliot was a man of numbers and nervous tics. He had always liked me because I turned in my expense reports on time. I dialed his number. It rang 4 times. I thought he would send me to voicemail. Hello. His voice was guarded. Elliot. I said. It is Paisley. There was a long pause. I could hear the sound of a television in the background. Paisley. I heard you moved. I did. Elliot. I am looking at a document. A guarantee addendum dated October 25th. I am not at the company anymore. Paisley. He said quickly. Too quickly. I left in November. I do not know anything about current operations. You were there in October. I said. You were there when this loan was renewed. Elliot. The signature is forged. I was in Chicago. Silence. Elliot. I pressed. This goes to court. The bank is going to depose everyone. They are going to look at who authorized the transmission of the documents. Your name is on the email chain to the bank officer. I see it right here. I just forwarded what they gave me. Elliot's voice cracked. I did not sign it. I refused to sign it. That is why they pushed me out early. I told your father I would not notarize it. Who signed it? Elliot? I did not see the hand. He whispered. But the file came from Logan's office. He brought it to me. He said you mailed it in. He said you wanted to help the family transition. And you believed him. No. Elliot said. But I wanted my severance package. I'm sorry. Paisley. I do not want your apology. I said. I want to know where the money went. $2 million does not just vanish in 3 months. Even Logan cannot burn cash that fast on dinners and trips. Elliot hesitated. You need to look at the vendor list. Look for a company called Titan Materials. Titan Materials. We never used a vendor by that name. Exactly. Elliot said they showed up in the system in September. Large invoices. 50,000 here. 80,000 there for consulting and specialized procurement. I tried to flag it. I asked for the tax ID. Logan told me to process the payments and stop being a dinosaur. Where are they located? I checked the address on the invoice before I left. Elliot said it is a P.O. box in Delaware. Paisley. Be careful. This is not just bad management. Feels like looting. Logan is scared. I saw him last week at the grocery store. He looks like a man who knows the walls are closing in. And when people like that get scared, they look for someone to throw to the wolves. They already picked the person. I said. Me? You need to stay in Chicago, Elliot said. Let the lawyers fight it. No, I said. If I stay here, I am a defendant. If I go there, I am a witness. And I'm going to be the witness who brings the whole house down. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from a lethal clarity. Titan Materials. A shell company. Logan was not just losing money. He was stealing it. He was draining the company accounts into a black box. Probably thinking he was being clever. Probably thinking he was setting up a golden parachute for when the inevitable crash happened. And he used my credit to fund his getaway car. I stood up. I walked to my closet. I pulled out my suitcase. I did not pack my work clothes. I packed my boardroom armor. The charcoal suit I wore when I had to fire a subcontractor who was stealing copper. I packed the hard drive with every email I had ever saved. I printed the flight receipt. I printed the forged document. I looked around my apartment. I had built a sanctuary here. It was safe. It was quiet. But safety would not save me. If I let this stand, my credit would be ruined for a decade. My reputation would be destroyed. Ledger Lake would die before it really began. I could not hide from this. I had to walk right back into the fire. I sat down at my laptop one last time. I opened a new email to Marcus Thorne. Subject: the smoking gun. Marcus. Attached is the proof. My flight records confirm I was out of state on the date of the signature. I also have a lead on where the money went. A shell vendor named Titan Materials. This is embezzlement disguised as insolvency. Draft a demand letter. But do not send it to my father. Send it to the bank's fraud department and copy the Northbridge Board of Directors. I am flying to Philadelphia tonight. Meet me there tomorrow. If they want a war, I am bringing the heavy artillery. Prepare the plan. If they set me up, I am not just defending myself. I am flipping the table. I hit send. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed the keys to the rental car. I looked at the phone, which was still buzzing with missed calls from my mother. Let it ring. I thought I would answer them in person, and they were not going to like what I had to say. The driveway of my childhood home was the first witness to the crime. The paver stones, usually pressure washed to a pristine gray every spring, were dark with moss. A decorative boulder near the entrance had been knocked askew, likely by a delivery truck, and left there like a dislocated shoulder. I parked my rental car next to Logan's convertible. His car was gleaming, freshly waxed, a bright red insult to the overgrown lawn surrounding it. I walked to the front door. I reached into my purse for my key, but I did not need it. The heavy oak door, which my mother used to insist be bolted even when we were just in the backyard, was unlatched. It drifted open under the pressure of my hand. The foyer was dim. The bulb in the overhead chandelier was burnt out. "Mom," I called out. There was no answer. Just the low hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, and the sound of a televised sporting event. I walked into the living room. If the driveway was a witness, the living room was the victim. The coffee table, a beautiful antique piece my parents had bought in Italy, was buried under a landslide of paper. It was not the organized chaos of a working office. It was the desperate clutter of avoidance. There were envelopes with clear plastic windows. There were pink notices from the utility company. There were thick packets from legal firms I did not recognize. And right on top, unopened, was a certified letter from the IRS. My mother was sitting on the edge of the sofa. She was wearing a bathrobe. Even though it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, her hands were in her lap, fingers twisting around each other, wringing the skin until it was white. She looked at me and her eyes were rimmed with red. My father was standing by the fireplace. He was pacing. 3 steps left. 3 steps right. Like a caged animal wearing a track into the rug. He was wearing a dress shirt, but the collar was unbuttoned and he had not shaved in 2 days. And then there was Logan. He was sprawled in the leather recliner, his feet up. He was wearing shorts and a polo shirt. His skin was a deep, rich bronze. The kind of tan you do not get from working in a Pennsylvania office in November. He was scrolling through his phone, smiling at something on the screen. He looked like he was on vacation. My parents looked like they were on death row. "You came," my mother whispered. She did not stand up. "I told you I would," I said. My voice was flat. I felt nostalgia. I felt only the cold, clinical detachment of a building inspector looking at a foundation that had rotted through. "Paisley," my father said, stopping his pacing. He tried to summon his old authority, puffing out his chest. But the air leaked out of him almost immediately. "We are glad you are here. We need a fresh set of eyes. The bank is being unreasonable. The bank follows math." "Dad," I said. "Math is never unreasonable. It is just inevitable." I walked past them to the dining room table where another stack of documents was piled. I did not ask for permission. I picked up the first sheet of papers. It was a mortgage statement. I frowned. "The house was paid off in 2010, I said, not looking up. "We had a party. You burned the note in the fireplace. We had to leverage the equity," my father said quickly, "just for liquidity to bridge the cash flow gap for the new equipment." I looked at the balance. $750,000. They had not just mortgaged the house. They had stripped it to the studs. $750,000. I read aloud. "Taken out 4 months ago. Where is that money, Dad?" "It is not in the company accounts. I saw the equipment yard photos. There is no new equipment. It is complicated." Logan spoke up from the recliner. He did not look away from his phone. "You do not understand modern financing, Paisley. You have to spend money to make money." I dropped the mortgage statement and picked up the next stack. These were credit card statements. The corporate American Express. The one that was supposed to be for materials and emergency travel only. I flipped through the pages. The list of charges was a travel log of excess. The breakers. Palm Beach. $4,000. Vail Ski Resort. $6,000. Club Live. Miami. $3,000. Ticketmaster VIP services. $2,000. I looked at the dates. They matched perfectly with the weeks Logan had been out of the office meeting investors. Client development, Logan said. Sensing my eyes on the page. I was courting the big fish. That is how a CEO operates. "You spent $12,000 at a resort in Cabo San Lucas on a Tuesday," I said, my voice rising just enough to cut through the air. "Who were you developing there?" "Logan." "The bartender." "I was networking." Logan snapped, finally dropping his feet to the floor. "I was building the brand. You were burning the house down," I said. "This is not networking. This is looting. You took a paid-off house and a solvent company and you turned them into a personal piggy bank because you were bored." "That is enough," my father said. "Paisley, we did not ask you here to audit the travel budget. We asked you here to help us with the bank guarantee. The loan officer is threatening to freeze the operating accounts on Monday. If that happens, payroll bounces. If payroll bounces, the unions walk. If the unions walk, we are dead." "We are already dead," I said. "You just haven't read the obituary yet." I reached into my bag. I pulled out the file I had brought from Chicago. I walked over to the coffee table and slapped the document down on top of the pile of unpaid bills. It was the personal guarantee addendum, the one with the forged signature. "Let's talk about this," I said. The room went silent. The sound of the TV seemed to get louder. What is that? My mother asked, her voice trembling. You know what it is? I said. I looked at Logan. You know what it is? Logan looked at the paper, then looked at the wall. He crossed his arms. It is just paperwork. Standard forms. It is a personal guarantee for $2 million. I said. Pledges my assets, my future income, and my company in Chicago as collateral for the debt you racked up. And it is signed by me. I pointed to the signature. Who signed this? I asked. No one answered. I asked a question. I said. My voice hard as steel. Who held the pen? My father looked at his shoes. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Logan let out a huff of air. Does it matter? You were going to sign it anyway. You always sign the operational stuff. We just expedited the process. The courier was waiting. It was an administrative decision. An administrative decision? I repeated. Is that what we are calling a felony now? Oh, stop being so dramatic. Logan said, standing up. He was taller than me. And he used to use that height to intimidate me. Did not work anymore. You are family. You help the family. Dad said you would understand. It is just a signature. Paisley. It is ink on paper. It is fraud. I said. It is only fraud if you report it. Logan said. A smirk touching the corner of his mouth. And you won't, because if you do, you drag Mom and Dad through the mud. You destroy the family name. You won't do that. You are the good daughter. You are the fixer. I looked at my father. Is that what you think? That I will just swallow a $2 million debt to save face? My father looked up. His eyes were pleading. Paisley, if we default, we lose the house. We lose everything. The guarantee just it buys us time. We can restructure. Logan has a plan. Logan's plan is a trip to the Bahamas, I said. I reached into my folder again. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a printout from Delta Airlines. I held it up. October 25th, I said. The day this document was signed in Philadelphia. This is my boarding pass. I was at 30,000 foot over Ohio when this signature was made. I have the credit card receipt for my coffee at O'Hare. I have the Uber receipt from the airport to my apartment. I placed the flight record next to the forged guarantee. The bank does not care about family tradition. I said. The bank cares about facts. And the fact is I was not in the room. My mother let out a small sob. Paisley, please do not show that to them. They will put your brother in jail. He put himself in jail when he picked up the pen, I said. Or maybe he did not pick it up. Maybe he made one of the secretaries do it. Did you, Logan? Did you make Janet sign my name before you fired her? Logan's tan face went pale for the first time. The arrogance flickered and died. I handled it. He stammered. It needed to be done. You handled it, I said. Just like you handled the permits you forgot to file. Just like you handled the contracts you didn't read. I looked around the room. I saw the decay. I saw the fear. But mostly, I saw the entitlement. They truly believed that I existed solely to be their safety net. They believed they could push me off a cliff and I would still try to catch them on the way down. I am not here to fix this, I said. I am here to end it. What do you mean? My father asked. I mean that I am done being the invisible engine of this family. I said I am done being the guarantor of your mistakes. I looked at my watch. It was 4:30. Get your lawyers ready, I said. And get the bank representative on the phone. For when? My father asked. For tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock at the office. I want the full board present. I want the bank's legal counsel present. And I want the company's external auditor present. Paisley. We cannot do that, Logan said, panic rising in his voice. If we bring everyone in, they will see the books. They will see the Titan Materials payments. Yet, I said they will. You cannot do this to your brother. My mother cried. He deserves a chance. He had a chance. I said. He had a company. He had a house. He had a trust fund. He had 15 years of my work to stand on. And he spent it all on first-class tickets and ego. I turned to the door. Wait. My father called out. Paisley. Where are you going? I am going to a hotel. I said. I am not staying in this house. It does not belong to us anymore. It belongs to the bank. You just haven't moved out yet. I walked back to the foyer. I stepped over a pile of junk mail. 9 o'clock. I said over my shoulder. Do not be late. And Logan. He looked up. His eyes wide with the terror of a child who has finally broken something that cannot be glued back together. Bring a pen. I said. You are going to need to sign your own name for once. I walked out the door and let it swing shut behind me. It did not click. The latch was broken. I walked to my car. The fresh air filling my lungs. Behind me. Inside the house. I could hear the shouting start. It was the sound of a reality distortion field collapsing. I got into my rental car and backed out of the driveway. I drove past the overgrown lawn. Past the broken boulder. I did not feel sad. I felt light. Tomorrow the demolition would begin in earnest. And this time I was not the one who would be buried in the rubble. The conference room at Northbridge Civil and Build smelled of stale coffee and fear. It was a scent I recognized from job sites where the structural concrete had failed a slump test, the sharp metallic odor of an impending disaster that could no longer be hidden behind drywall. I sat at the head of the mahogany table. It was the seat my grandfather had bought at an auction in 1975. It was the seat my father had occupied for 30 years. Today, my father was sitting to my right, his shoulders slumped, looking less like a chairman and more like a defendant. To my left was Marcus, my attorney. He had his laptop open and a stack of files arranged with military precision. Opposite us sat Mr. Sterling from First Keystone Commercial Bank. He was a man who looked like he was made of granite and low interest rates. He was not smiling. And at the far end, exiled to the corner, was Logan. He was wearing a suit that was too blue and too tight, fidgeting with a gold pen, looking like a child who had been sent to the principal's office, but still believed his charm would save him. Let us begin, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the silence of the room, it landed like a gavel. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. Simmons. The bank's position is simple. The commercial line of credit totaling $2.4 million is in technical default. The covenants regarding debt-to-equity ratios have been breached. Furthermore, the payment due on the first of the month was missed. He slid a paper across the table. We are preparing to accelerate the debt. Sterling continued. That means the full amount is due immediately. If Northbridge cannot pay, we will look to the guarantors for satisfaction. He looked directly at me. That means you. Simmons. As the guarantor on the most recent addendum, your personal assets are our primary target for recovery. My mother, sitting next to my father, let out a small strangled noise. But Paisley didn't. She wasn't here. The bank holds a document with a signature, Sterling said, cutting her off without looking at her. Until a court rules otherwise, that signature is valid, and litigation takes years. Seizure of assets takes weeks. I placed my hand on the table. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I understand the gravity. That is why we are here. I turned to my family. They were looking at me with a mixture of hope and terror. They wanted me to pull a rabbit out of a hat. They wanted the fixer to make the bad man from the bank go away. I have a proposal to restructure the debt and capitalize the company, I said. Mr. Sterling, if I can show proof of a solvency plan and a change in management, will the bank agree to a forbearance period of 90 days? Sterling considered this. The bank respects your track record. Simmons, your work in Chicago has been noted. If you are in the driver's seat, we are willing to listen. But if the current leadership remains, we liquidate on Monday. Current leadership? Logan scoffed from the end of the table. I am the CEO. I have a vision for this company. Your vision costs $2 million in 6 months, I said, not turning my head to look at him. And it bought us a lawsuit. I opened the folder in front of me. Inside was a document Marcus and I had drafted at 2 in the morning in the hotel business center. I am prepared to inject my own capital and leverage my firm's resources to stabilize Northbridge, I said. I will negotiate with the vendors. I will manage the projects. I will satisfy the bank. Oh, thank God. My mother exhaled, reaching for a tissue. I knew you would help. We are a family. However, continued, my voice sharpening, I am not doing this as an employee. I am not doing this as a daughter. I am doing this as a distress investor. I slid the document toward my father. This is a binding restructuring agreement, I said. It has 4 conditions. They are non-negotiable. You sign them all or I walk out that door and Mr. Sterling seizes the equipment yard by noon. My father put on his reading glasses. His hands were shaking. Condition 1. I said. I require a controlling interest in Northbridge Civil and Build. 51% of the voting stock is to be transferred to me immediately. I will hold the title of managing partner with absolute authority over all operational and financial decisions. 51%. Logan shouted, standing up. You are stealing my company. Dad gave it to me. It is my inheritance. It is not an inheritance, Logan, I said calmly. It is a liability. You own 100% of a sinking ship. I am offering to buy 51% of the wreckage so I can patch the hull. If you don't like it, you can keep 100% of the bankruptcy. Sit down. Logan. My father snapped. It was the first time he had raised his voice at the Golden Boy in years. Condition 2. I went on. Logan is removed from all financial responsibilities. He will have no signing authority on any bank account, checkbook, or contract. His title will be changed to Director of Business Development. He will report to me. He will have a weekly allowance for expenses, which must be pre-approved by my office. You are castrating me. Logan hissed. I am the face of this brand. You are the face of the deficit. I corrected him. You can shake hands and cut ribbons, but you will never touch a pen to a legal document again. Condition 3. I said. Turning the page. We are removing the interim CFO immediately. I will appoint an independent financial controller. Furthermore, we will hire a third-party forensic accounting firm to conduct a full audit of the last 24 months. The room went very quiet. I watched Logan. His eyes darted to the left. A small bead of sweat appeared on his temple. Is that necessary? My father asked softly. An audit is expensive. We are trying to save money. It is necessary for the bank, I lied smoothly. Mr. Sterling needs to know the books are clean before he extends the credit. Unless, course, there is something you don't want the bank to see. I held my father's gaze. He looked away first. Fine. He whispered. And condition 4. I said. This was the one that mattered. This was the steel trap. The company acknowledges that there are irregularities regarding the personal guarantee dated October 25th. Northbridge agrees to fully indemnify me against any liability arising from that specific signature. Furthermore, the company will cover all my legal fees required to rectify the record. You want us to admit it? My mother asked, her voice trembling. In writing Paisley, that could have legal consequences for your brother. The consequences already exist, I said. The only question is who pays for them. I am not paying for a loan I didn't sign. If you want me to save the house you are sitting in, you will protect me from the fraud that happened under this roof. This is blackmail. Logan said. She is blackmailing us. Dad. It is a deal. Marcus interjected, speaking for the first time. And it is a generous one. The alternative is federal investigation for bank fraud, which Mr. Sterling is obligated to initiate if this meeting fails. Mr. Sterling nodded. We have a fiduciary duty to report suspicious activity. I looked at my father. He looked small. He looked tired. The myth of the Simmons men had evaporated, leaving behind only an old man who had bet on the wrong horse. Dad, I said softly, the company is bleeding out. I can stop the bleeding, but I need the scalpel. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to survive? My father picked up the pen. He did not look at Logan. He did not look at my mother. Where do I sign? He asked. No. Logan lunged for the paper. Dad, don't. She is going to ruin me. She is jealous. She has always been jealous. My father slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Enough. He roared. Look at this room. Logan, look at the bank rep. Look at the lawyers. You did this. I gave you everything. I gave you the keys to the kingdom and you drove it off a bridge. He took a breath, his chest heaving. Your sister, he said. The word tasting bitter in his mouth, is the only reason we are not being escorted out by sheriffs right now. He signed the document. The pen scratched aggressively against the paper. He slid it to my mother. She was crying silently, tears ruining her makeup. She looked at Logan, then at me. She signed. Then I slid it to Logan. Your turn, I said. I won't, he said. Then I leave, I said. And Mr. Sterling calls the FBI. Logan looked at the bank rep. Sterling checked his watch again. I have a 10 o'clock conference call. You have 30 seconds. Logan grabbed the pen. He signed his name with a violent scrawl, tearing the paper slightly. I hope you are happy. He spat at me. You finally got what you wanted. You are the boss. I took the document. I blew on the ink to dry it. I am not happy. Logan, I said. I am busy. I handed the signed agreement to Mr. Sterling. The audit begins Monday, I said to the banker. You will have your revised cash flow projection by Friday. Good, Sterling said, standing up. We will hold off on the acceleration for now. He left the room. My family sat there looking like survivors of a shipwreck who had washed up on a cold, jagged rock. So, my father said, his voice hollow. You are in charge now. What is the first order of business? I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. The first order of business, I said, is changing the locks. I want everyone's keys on the table now. Paisley, my mother started. I repeated. And access cards and corporate credit cards. One by one. They placed them on the mahogany table. The metal clinking against the wood was the only sound in the room. I scooped them up and dropped them into my bag. Go home, I told them. I have work to do. They filed out of the room, ghosts in their own building. When the door closed, I let out a breath I'd been holding for an hour. My hands were trembling slightly. Marcus looked at me. You got it all. Control. Indemnity. Oversight. Yes, I said. You won, he said. No, I said. Looking at the empty chair where Logan had sat. I just bought a ticket to the crime scene. I knew my brother. I knew he was lazy. But looking at his reaction today, the panic, the sweat, the desperation, I realized something. He wasn't just afraid of losing his title. He was afraid of what I was going to find in those boxes. The $2 million was just the surface. Titan Materials was the key. I walked over to the window and looked out at the equipment yard. It was raining. Marcus, I said, call the auditors. Tell them to bring a double team. I want to see every invoice, every email, and every deleted file from the last 6 months. What do you think you're going to find? Marcus asked. Think, I said. Watching a rusted excavator get soaked in the rain. That my brother didn't just spend the money. I think he laundered it. And if he did, 51% control wasn't going to save him. It was going to be the shovel I used to bury him. The first 72 hours of my reign were not spent in celebration. They were spent in a surgical theater cutting away the gangrene that had infected every limb of the company. I did not sleep. I lived on black coffee and the adrenaline of disaster management. My first act as the new managing partner was to make 3 phone calls. I did not call headhunters. I did not call expensive consultants. I called the people Logan had thrown away like used wrappers. I called Janet Ruiz first. She had been the office manager for 20 years. She knew where the bodies were buried. And more importantly, she knew where the spare keys to the filing cabinets were kept. Logan had fired her for having negative energy. Hello. Her voice was suspicious. Janet, I said. It is Paisley. I am at the office. I have the keys. I have the checkbook. And I have a desk waiting for you. Is he there? She asked. She did not need to say his name. He is in a box, I said. Figuratively. He has no power. Janet, I need you. I need someone who knows how to say no to people who want money we do not have. I will be there in 20 minutes, she said. Next, I called Miles Barber, our best project manager, who had been let go because he refused to cut corners on safety railing. And finally, I called Rita Holloway, the estimator who Logan claimed lacked vision because she refused to bid on jobs with negative profit margins. By noon on Monday, the old guard was back. The atmosphere in the office shifted instantly. Under Logan, it had been a frat house of high fives and vague promises. Now, it was a war room. Janet, I barked as she walked in. Cancel every corporate credit card. Every single one. If someone needs to buy a pencil, they fill out a requisition form. If Logan tries to use the company Uber account, I want it to decline. With pleasure. Janet said, cracking her knuckles. Miles, I said, handing him a stack of folders. Go to the job sites. All of them. I need a real percentage of completion. Not what Logan told the bank. I want to know exactly how much dirt has been moved and how much steel is actually in the ground. Rita. I pointed to the server room. Lock down the bidding software. Change the passwords. No quote goes out the door without 2 signatures. Mine and yours. We were not building anything new. We were building a firewall. Tuesday was the day of the apologies. I set up a folding table in the conference room, the same room where I had seized control, and I invited the top 10 subcontractors we owed money to. These were men with calloused hands and short tempers. They were electricians, plumbers, and concrete pourers who had been stiffed for 3 months while Logan was drinking cocktails in Miami. They walked in looking like a lynch mob. I am not here to give you a sob story, I told them. Standing at the head of the table, I did not offer them coffee. I offered them the truth. Northbridge is in a liquidity crisis, I said. We have 0 cash on hand to pay the past due invoices today. A grumble went through the room. One guy, a heavy-set masonry contractor named Big Tony, stood up. Then why are we here? I am pulling my guys off the site. You can lay your own brick. You can walk? I said, meeting his gaze. And if you walk, the project stalls. If the project stalls, the bank forecloses. If the bank forecloses, you get in line behind the secured creditors, which means you get 0 cents on the dollar. I slid a stack of papers across the table. Or, I said, you can look at this. This is a payment schedule. I am asking for 60 days. If you keep working, I will pay the current invoices weekly in full, and I will pay 10% of the old debt every Friday until we are square. Why should we trust you? Tony asked. Your brother lied to my face 3 times. My brother is not signing the checks anymore. I said, I am. And in 15 years, have I ever lied to you about a payment? The room went quiet. They remembered. They remembered who had processed their change orders at midnight. They remembered who had driven checks to their houses on Christmas Eve so their guys could get paid. 60 days. Tony grumbled, sitting back down. But if you miss one Friday, Paisley, I am taking a sledgehammer to the foundation. If I miss a Friday, I said, I will hand you the hammer myself. We had a deal. It was fragile, held together by spit and my personal reputation, but it was a deal. Wednesday was the bank. Mr. Sterling kept his word. He did not accelerate the loan, but he put us on a leash so tight I could barely breathe. We will grant the forbearance, Sterling told me over the phone, but we want an independent monitor on site once a week. And we want the audit results immediately upon completion. If there is any hint of further malfeasance, Paisley, we pull the plug. Understood, I said. I hung up and looked at the mountain of paperwork on my desk. I was exhausted. But for the first time in months, the bleeding had stopped. We were stable. Or so I thought. The problem with a rot like Logan is that it does not just sit still. It tries to spread. Logan had been coming into the office late every day, sulking in his new, smaller office. I had stripped him of his title, his credit card, and his authority. But I could not strip him of his need for validation. On Thursday, I caught him in the hallway. He was on his cell phone, his voice dropping to a whisper when he saw me. Just wrapping up a lead, he said, flashing a smile that did not reach his eyes. Old contact wants to do a retail fit-out in Jersey. Send the lead to Rita, I said without stopping. She handles the estimates now. Come on, Paisley. He whined, following me. I can handle a simple bid. I know the numbers. Let me bring in one win just to show Dad I am still part of the team. You are part of the team. I said you are the bench warmer. Send it to Rita. He didn't send it to Rita. 2 hours later, my email flagged a notification from the server. Security alert. Unauthorized. Quote generation attempted. I logged in. Logan had tried to bypass the new protocol. He had drafted a quote for a $200,000 renovation. I looked at the line items. He had priced the drywall at 50 cents a square foot. The market rate was $120. He had promised a 4-week turnaround on a job that required 8 weeks of labor. He was trying to buy a contract by underbidding it by 40%. If we had won that job, we would have lost $50,000 the moment we signed the paper. I walked into his office. I did not knock. You tried to send the quote, I said. Logan jumped. I was just drafting it. I was going to show you. You priced the labor below minimum wage. Logan, I said. Are you trying to bankrupt us? Or are you just that bad at math? I need a win, he shouted, his face turning red. You took everything. The staff looks at me like I am a leper. I need to close a deal. You are a leper. I said coldly. You are infectious. And until the audit clears you, you do not touch a client. If you try to bypass the system again, I will have security escort you out, and I will change the locks on the front door. Try me. He slumped back in his chair. You are enjoying this. I am surviving this. I said there is a difference. I walked out. I felt a sick knot in my stomach. He was desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. But the biggest mistake was already waiting for me in the conference room. The forensic auditors had arrived on Monday morning. They were a team of 2 men and a woman named Sarah. Sarah was the lead. She wore rimless glasses and had the personality of a calculator. I liked her immediately. For 4 days, they had been silent, holed up in the conference room with boxes of files and access to our digital server. They drank water, ate sandwiches at their desks, and spoke in hushed tones. On Friday afternoon, Sarah knocked on my door. "M. Simmons," she said. "We need you to see something." Her tone was not the "we found a clerical error" tone. It was the "we found a body" tone. I followed her to the conference room. The table was covered in spreadsheets. "We have been tracing the cash outflows," Sarah said, pointing to a graph on her laptop screen. "Most of the vendors are standard concrete, steel, lumber. The pricing is high, likely due to late fees and poor negotiation, but it is legitimate." But I asked. "But then there is Titan Materials," she said. My heart skipped a beat. That was the name Elliot had whispered to me. "We did a deep dive on Titan," Sarah said. "According to your accounts payable, Northbridge has paid them $480,000 in the last 4 months. The invoices are for consulting services, specialized procurement, and logistics expediting. We don't use logistics consultants," I said. "We have trucks." "Exactly," Sarah said. So, we looked at the entity itself. Titan Materials was incorporated in Delaware exactly 4 months ago, 2 days before the first invoice was sent. She clicked a key and a new window opened. "The business address is a UPS store PO box in Wilmington," she said. "That is not illegal, but it is a red flag. But here is where it gets interesting." She pointed to a phone number listed on the incorporation documents. "We cross-referenced this number with the company's cell phone records," Sarah said. "Specifically, the records for Logan Simmons." She slid a printout across the table. It was a call log. There were dozens of calls, hundreds of minutes. "Your brother calls the owner of Titan Materials 3 times a week," Sarah said. "Usually right before an invoice is approved and usually late at night." I stared at the numbers. "Who owns it?" I asked. "The registered agent is a lawyer," Sarah said. "But we found a secondary contact email buried in the metadata of the electronic invoices. It belongs to a man named Brad Calloway." "Brad Calloway?" I repeated. The name sounded familiar. "He was Logan's fraternity brother," I said, the memory surfacing like a dead fish. "He came to the Christmas party 3 years ago. He works in insurance number marketing. He is listed as the president of Titan Materials," Sarah said. "And here is the kicker. We traced the IP address from where the invoices were uploaded to your portal." She paused, looking at me with sympathy. "The invoices were uploaded from an IP address that matches the Wi-Fi network of a condominium complex in Philadelphia, the same complex where Brad Calloway lives. And on 2 occasions, the IP address matched the guest's Wi-Fi at the resort in Cabo San Lucas on the same days your brother was there." The room spun. Logan didn't just pay a fake vendor. He was in the room with the fake vendor while he was doing it. They were on vacation together, drinking margaritas bought with my company's money, uploading fake invoices to cover the tab, and laughing about it. "This is not mismanagement," Sarah said quietly, closing the laptop. "This is not incompetence. Simmons. This is systematic embezzlement. They created a shell company to siphon cash directly out of the operating account. It is a conspiracy to commit fraud. I sat down in one of the chairs. I thought I had seen the bottom. I thought the forged signature on the loan was the worst of it. A desperate act to save a drowning company. But this was premeditated. This was cold. Logan had been stealing from the family for months. He had drained nearly $500,000 while my father was mortgaging the house to cover the payroll. He had let me take the fall for the loan while he was funneling the cash into his friend's pocket. What do we do? I asked. We have to include this in the report to the bank. Sarah said it is material. If we hide it, we are complicit. I know, I said. I am not asking you to hide it. I'm asking how much time do I have before the police get involved? Once the bank sees this, Sarah said. It is out of your hands. They will file a suspicious activity report. The district attorney will pick it up. I looked at the call log again. Logan. My little brother. The boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. The boy my father built a workshop for. He wasn't just a failure. He was a criminal. Print it. I said. Print everything. The call logs. The IP matches. The invoices. Are you going to the police? Sarah asked. Not yet, I said. Standing up. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a cold, hard fury. I am going to have a family meeting, I said. And this time, I am not bringing a deal memo. I walked out of the conference room. I looked down the hall toward Logan's office. The door was closed. He was probably in there playing a game on his phone, waiting for 5 o'clock, thinking he had survived the worst of it. He had no idea. I had come back to save the company. I had come back to clear my name. But now I realized my mission had changed. I wasn't just cleaning up a mess. I was gathering evidence for a prosecution. And the defendant was sitting 30 feet away. The air in my office was so thick with betrayal. I could taste it. It tasted like copper and stale toner. I was staring at a recovered email that Sarah, the forensic auditor, had dug out of the server's digital graveyard. It was dated October 24th, one day before my forged signature appeared on the bank guarantee from M. Reynolds, interim CFO, to L. Simmons. Subject: read the fix. Logan. The file resolution is too low on the old scan. I cannot lift the signature cleanly. I need you to find a document she signed in ink. Scan it at 600 dpi and send it to me. We need to make this look perfect for the addendum. The bank officer is asking for it by tomorrow noon. I read it 3 times. Lift the signature. Make this look perfect. This was not a vague instruction. This was a technical request for forgery. M. Reynolds. Mark Reynolds. That was the interim CFO Logan had hired after pushing Elliot out. I looked him up on LinkedIn. Mark Reynolds. Previous experience. Investment consultant. Education. Same university as Logan. Same fraternity. I picked up the phone and called Elliot Crane again. Elliot. I said. Skipping the pleasantries. Tell me about Mark Reynolds. Mark. Elliot's voice was shaky. He is Logan's friend. I told you he came in as a consultant first. He set up the new vendor payment system. Does he have any accounting background? No. Elliot said. He was a marketing major, but he knew how to set up shell companies. He is the one who incorporated Titan Materials. I am sure of it. I saw mail for Titan on his desk once. I hung up. The picture was now terrifyingly clear. Logan had not just been lazy. He had brought in a specialized team to loot the company. He brought in Brad Calloway to create fake invoices and Mark Reynolds to cook the books and forge the signatures. It was a frat house heist squad, and they had been stripping the copper wire out of my family's legacy for 6 months. But that was not the worst part. Sarah walked in again. Her face was pale. Simmons, she said. We looked at the city center project. The big one. The one your father said was the company's future. What about it? The cost overrun? Sarah said. It is $4 million over budget, but when we checked the material orders, the steel was never delivered. The concrete was never poured. We have invoices for 3,000 tons of rebar that does not exist, and every single purchase order was approved with a signature. She placed a stack of papers on my desk. Your signature, she said. I looked at them. Dozens of them. Purchase orders for phantom steel. Change orders for invisible labor. All signed with that same smooth practice forgery of Paisley Simmons. They have been using your name for everything. Sarah whispered. For months. Every time they stole money, they signed your name to the authorization. You are not just the guarantor on the loan. Simmons. According to these papers, you are the architect of the embezzlement. My phone rang. It was Mr. Sterling from the bank. Simmons. His voice was ice. We have just received an internal flag on the account. There is suspicious activity involving a vendor named Titan Materials. And we see authorized payments signed by you going back to September. Mr. Sterling. I said. My voice steady despite the room spinning. I did not sign those. I am conducting an internal investigation right now. That is irrelevant to the algorithm. Sterling said. The fraud protocol has been triggered. We are freezing the operating accounts. Effective immediately. You cannot do that, I said, standing up. It is Friday. Payroll runs at 4 o'clock. We have 47 employees. If the accounts freeze, the checks bounce. I'm sorry, Sterling said. But we cannot allow further dissipation of assets. The freeze stands until the investigation is complete. The line went dead. I looked at the clock. It was 2:30. 47 families, carpenters, laborers, truck drivers, people who lived paycheck to paycheck, people I had promised to protect. If I did nothing, the checks would bounce. The company would implode by Monday, and the blame would fall on me, the managing partner who had just taken control. But if I called the authorities now, if I handed over the evidence immediately to clear my name, the accounts would stay frozen as evidence. The payroll would still bounce. I had a choice. Save myself and let 47 families starve this weekend or find a way to pay them, knowing it might give Logan and his crew another day to cover their tracks. I walked out of my office and went straight to Logan's door. He was packing a box. Going somewhere? I asked. He jumped. Just clearing out some personal stuff. You said I was demoted, right? You are not demoted. I said you are done. I saw the emails. Logan. I saw the request to lift my signature. I saw the phantom steel. He stopped packing. He turned to me and for the first time the mask of the charming brother fell off completely. Beneath it was something ugly and petulant. So what? He sneered. You are in charge now, right? You wanted the big chair. You wanted the control. Well, you got it. You signed the agreement. Absolute authority over all financial decisions. That means you own the past, too. Cease. That is not how it works, I said. It is exactly how it works. He shouted. You are the managing partner. If the bank finds fraud, it happened on your watch or under your name. Who are they going to believe? The son who just wanted to build a legacy or the bitter daughter who came back to seize power? You are delusional, I said. Am I? He laughed. Mom and Dad will back me up. They have to. If I go down, the family name is trash. If you go down, well, you were always the outsider anyway. My blood went cold. I walked past him down the hall to my father's office. My father was sitting in the dark staring out the window. Dad, I said, Did you know? He didn't turn around. Yo. Know what? Did you know they were forging my name on the purchase orders? Did you know they were billing for steel that didn't exist? He was silent for a long time. I knew the costs were high. He said softly. I asked Logan. He said he was handling it. He said he had a system to accelerate the cash flow. He said he just needed authorization and you let him use my name. My father finally turned. His eyes were wet. He said you wouldn't mind. He said it was just paperwork. He said if we didn't get the cash, we would lose the house. I was scared. Paisley. I didn't want to lose the house. So you sacrificed me. I said to save a pile of bricks. I thought if you came back. He stammered. You would fix it. You always fix it. I thought if you took over, you would find a way to make the numbers work and we could just bury the mistakes. Move on. Bury the mistakes. I repeated. That is what this was. You didn't ask me back to lead. You asked me back to be the janitor. You wanted me to clean up the crime scene and then take the fall if the cops showed up. My mother walked in. She had been listening from the doorway. Paisley. Please, she cried. Your father said if you came back, everything would be smooth. We didn't know it was this bad. We just thought you are so strong. You can handle anything. I can handle work, I said, my voice shaking. I cannot handle being the sigh for a criminal conspiracy. I looked at them, my parents, the people who were supposed to protect me. They had watched their son light a match. And instead of putting out the fire, they threw me onto it, hoping my body would smother the flames. The bank froze the accounts. I said, payroll is dead. Oh God. My mother sobbed. The workers. The rumors. I have one move left, I said. I can wire the payroll for my personal account in Chicago. It is my life savings. It is everything I have earned in 15 years. But it will clear the checks. Do it. Logan said from the doorway. Do it. Save the company. That is your job. I looked at him. I looked at my parents. I'm going to pay them. I said. Not for you. Not for the company. But for the men and women who actually work. And then I pulled out my phone. Then what? Logan asked. A flicker of fear returning to his eyes. Then I am done fixing, I said. I walked back to my office. I logged into my personal bank account. My hand hovered over the transfer button. $200,000. My savings. My safety net. I hit send. Transaction successful. I felt a physical pain in my chest. I was broke again. But I was also free. I picked up the phone and called Marcus. Marcus. I said. The accounts are frozen. I just covered payroll personally. You did what? Marcus shouted. Paisley. That makes you look complicit. It looks like you are commingling funds. No. I said it looks like I am the only honest person in the room. Marcus. Listen to me. I have the emails. I have the IP addresses. I have the forged purchase orders. Okay. Marcus said we go to the FBI on Monday. No. I said we go now. But first, I need you to prepare one last document. What document? Confession. I said. Not mine. Theirs. They will never sign it. Marcus said. They will. I said. Looking at the security camera feed on my monitor, I saw Logan putting files into his trunk. I saw my father holding his head in his hands. Because I am going to give them a choice. I said. They can sign it and lose the company or they can refuse and I will play the recording of this afternoon's conversation to the district attorney. What recording? Marcus asked. I tapped the phone on my desk. The voice memo app had been running for the last 20 minutes. Every word. Logan's taunt about me owning the past. My father's admission that he knew about the signatures. My mother's plea. It was all there. The one I just made. I said. Get the papers ready. Marcus. I am calling a meeting for tomorrow morning and tell the bank rep to come back. We are going to have a finale. I hung up. I looked at the empty office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the floor. Your brother deserves it. My father had said. He was right. Logan deserved a cell. And tomorrow I was going to hand him the key. Saturday morning at North Bridge Civil and Build usually meant silence. The heavy machinery was parked. The phones were off. And the dust from the week settled on the linoleum floors. But this Saturday, the air in the conference room was vibrating with a tension so high it felt like a suspension cable about to snap. I stood at the head of the table. To my right sat Marcus, my attorney, looking like a shark who had just smelled blood in the water. To my left sat Sarah, the forensic auditor, her laptop open and connected to the projector. Across from us were the grim faces of the bank representatives, led by Mr. Sterling. And at the far end, huddled together like survivors on a life raft, were my parents and Logan. Logan looked terrible. His tan seemed to have grayed overnight. He was wearing a tracksuit, having abandoned the pretense of the CEO suit. My father was staring at his hands. My mother was clutching a handkerchief, her eyes darting between me and the door as if expecting the police to burst in at any moment. We are here to conclude the internal investigation, I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the shaking anger that had consumed me the day before. Today, I was not a sister. I was an executioner and to decide the future of this company. We have a flight at noon. Logan muttered, not looking up. We are going to the lake house. Can we hurry this up? You are not going to the lake house, Logan, I said. You are not going anywhere until Mr. Sterling decides if he is going to call the federal prosecutor. Logan's head snapped up. What? Sarah. I nodded to the auditor. Please walk us through the timeline. Sarah tapped a key. The projector screen lit up with a timeline that stretched across the wall. It was a visual map of the crime. Exhibit it, Sarah said, her voice clinical. On September 12th, a vendor named Titan Materials was added to the accounts payable system. The address is a P.O. box in Delaware. The registered agent is invisible. She clicked again. A photo of a condominium complex appeared. However, Sarah continued. We traced the IP address used to upload the invoices. It matches the residential Wi-Fi of a Mr. Brad Calloway in Philadelphia. We also have a cross-reference of cell phone tower data. Placing Logan Simmons at this location on the exact dates the invoices were created. That is circumstantial, Logan snapped, though his voice cracked. Brad is a friend. I work from his place sometimes. Exhibit B. Sarah ignored him. The invoices themselves totaling $480,000. They are for logistics consulting. There is no corresponding work product. No reports. No deliverables. Just cash transfers. And finally, I stepped in, taking over the narrative. The bank guarantee. I pulled the forged document from my file and placed it in the center of the table. Mr. Sterling, I said, addressing the banker. You have a document signed Paisley Simmons dated October 25th. You used this document to extend credit to a company that was technically insolvent. You are threatening to seize my assets based on this signature. That is correct, Sterling said, his face unreadable. Show the flight log, I said to Sarah. The screen changed. It showed my Delta Airlines ticket, my boarding pass, and my Uber receipt from Chicago. I was 800 miles away, I said. I did not sign this. My brother did. Or rather, He ordered it to be done. You cannot prove that, Logan said, standing up. He was desperate now, his eyes wild. It could have been anyone. Maybe you signed it before you left and just dated it later. You are trying to frame me because you want the company back. Sit down. Logan, my father whispered. No. Logan shouted. She is lying. She is jealous. Dad. Tell them. Tell them I would never do that. I looked at my brother. He really believed it. He believed that if he just shouted loud enough, the reality would bend around him. He believed he was the protagonist of a story where consequences were for other people. I expected you to say that, I said. I expected you to blame the admin or the system or me. That is why I brought this. I took my phone out of my pocket. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker in the center of the table. Yesterday, I said, I recovered a deleted audio file from the company server. It seems Mark Reynolds, your fake CFO, liked to record his meetings to cover his own back. This was recorded on October 24th. I pressed play. The sound was crystal clear. Filled the room, bouncing off the glass walls. Voice 1. Mark Reynolds. Logan. The bank needs the signature by tomorrow. Bailey is in Chicago. We cannot get her to sign this. The courier won't wait. Voice 2. Logan Simmons. Just sign it. Mark. Use the scanner. Lift her signature from the old lease agreement. Nobody looks that close. Voice 1. This is fraud. Logan. If she finds out, she will burn the place down. Voice 2. She won't find out. And if she does, who cares? Put her name on it. If the ship sinks, she is the captain. She will have to come back to save us. She always cleans up my mess. Besides, Dad said I needed to be aggressive. Just do it. Click. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a building. My mother let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She covered her mouth, staring at Logan as if she had never seen him before. My father looked like he had been punched in the gut. He turned slowly to look at his son. His face was gray. My father whispered. You said she mailed it. You told me she agreed to help. Logan stammered. He looked around the room, searching for an ally. But there were none. I did it for us, Dad. We needed the money. The bank was going to pull the line. You did it to steal. Mr. Sterling said. His voice cut through the family drama like a razor. Sterling stood up. He walked over to the window and looked out, then turned back to me. Simmons. Sterling said. This is sufficient evidence for us to trigger the fraud protocol. Normally, I would call the federal authorities immediately, freeze all assets, and liquidate the company to recover what we can. If you do that, I said, 47 people lose their jobs on Monday. The projects stop. The bonding company sues, and you get 10 cents on the dollar. I know, Sterling said. Which is why I am making an exception. He pointed a finger at Logan. We will agree to unfreeze the payroll account and keep the credit line open for 90 days. Sterling said. But only under one condition. That man is removed from the building permanently. He is to have no access, no equity, and no role. If he sets foot on this property, we call the FBI. And Sterling added, looking at me, you sign a new personal guarantee, a real one. You take full liability. You control the cash. You verify every penny. I looked at Marcus. He nodded. It was a terrible deal financially, but it was the only way to save the company and the employees. Except, I said. I turned to Logan. You heard him, I said. You are fired for cause. Gross misconduct. Embezzlement. Fraud. Logan's face twisted. The panic was replaced by a surge of pure spoiled rage. You cannot fire me, he screamed. I own this company. Dad gave it to me. Dad. Tell her you said I deserved it. You said it was my birthright. My father stood up. He looked old. He looked broken. But for the first time in his life, he looked at his son without the rose-colored glasses of favoritism. I said you deserved the chance, my father said, his voice shaking. I gave you the house. I gave you the chair. I gave you the trust. He took a step toward Logan. And you used it to rob us. My father said. You stole from me. You stole from your sister. You forged her name to cover your own incompetence. I was building a legacy. Logan shouted. You were building a prison cell. My father said. Get out. What? Logan stepped back. Get out, my father roared. Do what your sister says. Leave before I call the police myself. Logan looked at his mother. She turned her head away, weeping into her hands. He looked at me. His eyes were full of venom. You think you won? Logan spat. You think you are so smart. But you are just a thief. You manipulated this whole thing. You set me up. I am going to sue you. I am going to tell everyone you stole the company from me. Try it, I said. I nodded to Marcus. Marcus pulled a document from his briefcase. It was the agreement Logan had signed the day before. The one granting me 51% control and indemnity. You signed this yesterday, Logan. Marcus said calmly. You acknowledged the irregularities. You waived your rights. If you sue, this document goes into the public record. And then the district attorney won't just be investigating Titan Materials. They will be investigating you for perjury. Logan froze. He looked at the paper. He looked at the bank rep. He realized finally that the safety net was gone. There was no one left to catch him. Security is waiting in the lobby. I said they will escort you to your car. You can take your personal items. Leave the laptop. Leave the phone. Logan stood there for a long moment. He looked at the boardroom table where he had played CEO for 6 months. Then he looked at me. I hate you, he whispered. I know, I said. That is the first honest thing you have said all year. He turned and walked out. He did not look back at our parents. The door closed with a heavy final click. The room let out a collective breath. Mr. Sterling, I said, turning back to business. The payroll has been funded from my personal capital. I expect the operating accounts to be unfrozen by Monday morning. It will be done. Sterling said. You have a hard road ahead. Simmons. The debt load is heavy. I know how to carry heavy things, I said. My parents were still sitting at the end of the table. They looked like statues of grief. I walked over to them. I did not hug them. I did not comfort them. I stood at the head of the table, my hand resting on the leather chair that was now mine. Dad, I said. Mom. Go home. Paisley. My mother wept. What will happen to him? Will he go to jail? That depends on the bank, I said. And it depends on whether he pays back the $480,000 he stole. If I were you, I would tell him to sell the convertible. We are so sorry. My father whispered. We didn't see it. We just wanted. I know what you wanted, I said. You wanted the tradition. You wanted the son to be the king. Well, the king is dead. Long live the worker. I turned my back on them and sat down. I opened my laptop. I had a company to rebuild. They left the room silently, fading into the background of a story they no longer controlled. For the next 6 months, I worked harder than I had ever worked in my life. I sold the lake house to pay down the principal. I liquidated the luxury fleet. I sued Titan Materials and recovered about half of the stolen funds before Brad Calloway fled the state. Logan was eventually indicted on federal wire fraud charges. The bank pushed for it. I did not intervene. I did not testify against him. But I did not help him either. He took a plea deal. 3 years in a minimum security facility. My parents visited him every week. They stopped calling me. That was fine. I didn't need their calls. I needed their absence. Northbridge Civil and Build survived. We didn't thrive immediately. But we survived. We paid off the vendors. We finished the projects. The workers kept their jobs. One evening, a year later, I was sitting in my office, the same office that used to be my father's. It was late. The building was quiet. I looked at the framed photo of my grandfather on my desk. He was smiling in front of his bulldozer. I thought about the last thing my father had said to me at that dinner table a lifetime ago. Your brother deserves it. He was right. Logan deserved exactly what he got. He deserved the consequences of his arrogance. He deserved the reality that finally crashed down on him. But as I looked out the window at the yard, now full of working trucks and busy crews, I realized something else. I deserved something, too. I didn't deserve the abuse. I didn't deserve the debt. But I deserved this moment. I deserved the silence of a job well done. I deserved to look at the name on the building and know that it stood for something real again. You were right, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. He got what he deserved. And finally, so did I. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and walked out of the door. I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. I had the only key that mattered.